American commanders predicted 5 days to capture Iwo Jima. It took 36 days and 26,000 casualties, one of the only Pacific battles where American losses nearly matched Japanese deaths. The difference wasn't courage or firepower, it was 11 miles of tunnels they never saw coming. This is the story of how a catastrophic intelligence failure transformed an expected quick victory into the bloodiest battle in Marine Corps history. It's the story of a revolutionary Japanese general who abandoned honor for strategy, building an invisible fortress designed not to win, but to make the invasion of Japan seem too costly to contemplate. And it's the story of how the most famous photograph of World War II captured only a moment in a battle that would rage for another month, sparking a debate that continues today. Was any strategic objective worth this much blood? An 8-square-mile volcanic rock in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, worthless except for one thing. It could win or lose the war against Japan. Iwo Jima sat exactly halfway between American B-29 bases in the Mariana Islands and the Japanese home islands. By late 1944, B-29 superfortresses had begun their long-range bombing campaign against Japan, flying 1,500 miles each way from the Marianas. But damaged bombers often crashed into the Pacific during the grueling return journey. Hundreds of airmen died not from enemy fire, but from the simple mathematics of distance and fuel capacity. The problem wasn't just the distance. Japanese fighters based on Iwo Jima intercepted American bombers both coming and going. They attacked B-29 bases in the Marianas worse. The island's early warning radar systems gave Tokyo advance notice of every incoming raid, allowing Japanese defenses to prepare and diminishing the element of surprise that made strategic bombing effective. American military planners saw 3 immediate benefits from capturing this volcanic rock. First, eliminating Japanese fighters and radar would remove a constant threat to the bombing campaign. Second, Iwo Jima's airfields could base P-51 Mustang fighters that would escort B-29s all the way to Tokyo and back, dramatically increasing bomber protection and allowing them to carry heavier payloads instead of extra fuel. Third, and perhaps most important, the island would provide emergency landing fields for crippled bombers that couldn't make it back to the Marianas. The strategic calculus seemed simple. Take Iwo Jima, save thousands of airmen, increase bombing effectiveness, and accelerate Japan's defeat. The monthly tonnage of bombs dropped on Japan increased 11-fold in March 1945, coinciding with Iwo Jima's use as a base. By war's end, over 2,400 B-29 superfortresses made emergency landings on the island, potentially saving approximately 24,000 aircrew members, roughly 10 men per bomber. But American planners made their calculations based on one fatal assumption, that Iwo Jima would be defended like every other Pacific island they'd taken. They had no idea what was waiting beneath the volcanic rock. While American intelligence watched the island's surface, 21,000 Japanese soldiers were disappearing underground, building something no one had seen before. Lieutenant General Kuribayashi arrived on Iwo Jima in June 1944 with explicit orders from Tokyo: defend the island to the last man, inflict maximum casualties on the Americans, and delay their advance as long as possible. But Kuribayashi had studied previous Pacific battles and reached a revolutionary conclusion. Traditional Japanese tactics, defending at the waterline, launching suicidal banzai charges, dying gloriously for the emperor, accomplished nothing except giving Americans target practice. Kuribayashi abandoned everything Japanese military tradition demanded: no beach defenses, no banzai charges, no dying for honor. Instead, he ordered construction of a vast underground fortress that would turn Iwo Jima itself into a weapon. Beginning in mid-1944, Japanese forces constructed over 11 miles of interconnected tunnels reaching up to 75 feet below ground. The volcanic rock required hand tools and explosives. Thousands of laborers and soldiers worked until the invasion, linking more than 800 fortified bunkers, pillboxes, command centers, and artillery positions into a single integrated defensive system. Main command caves descended 75 feet deep, with living quarters, storage areas, hospitals, and communication centers built into the network. The engineering genius was in the design. Defenders could emerge from hidden positions, fire on Americans, then vanish back into the tunnels before counterattack interconnected firing positions provided crossfire and mutual support. Reverse slope defenses shielded positions from direct bombardment. Artillery and mortars fired from cave mouths, then retracted inside air vents, camouflage, and sealed doors protected garrisons from gas and explosives. The Americans would face an invisible, invulnerable enemy that could strike from anywhere and retreat into the earth. But Kuribayashi's revolution went deeper than engineering. He issued orders that marked a radical departure from Japanese military tradition. It is better to kill 10 men than die for nothing. If you kill one enemy, that is enough. He forbade wasteful suicide charges. He demanded disciplined, coordinated counterattacks designed to inflict maximum American casualties while preserving Japanese combat power as long as possible. His strategy wasn't about victory or honor. It was about making the Americans pay so dearly that invading the Japanese home islands would seem unthinkable. Writing to his family, Kuribayashi accepted his fate with cold clarity. "I will fight to the end to defend this island, but I do not expect to return." The fortress was complete. The trap was set. But American intelligence was looking at Iwo Jima and seeing an island they'd already conquered a dozen times before. How catastrophically wrong could their estimates be? February 19th, 1945, 30,000 Marines hit the beaches expecting 5 days of fighting. The enemy had other plans. American intelligence estimated Japanese strength at 13,000 to 15,000 troops. The actual number was 21,000, a 40 to 50% undercount that fundamentally skewed invasion planning. Reconnaissance completely missed the scale of underground defenses. Planners assumed conventional surface fortifications that could be destroyed by bombardment. They had no idea they were looking at the entrance to an underground city. The pre-invasion bombardment seemed overwhelming. From February 16th to 19th, American naval forces delivered over 6,800 tons of bombs and more than 22,000 naval shells onto 8 square miles of volcanic rock. The island disappeared beneath smoke and explosions. Commanders watched the barrage and felt confident. Nothing could survive that. Everything survived that. Most Japanese positions were too deep or too well camouflaged to suffer meaningful damage. The bombardment scraped the surface, while 21,000 soldiers waited underground untouched, watching through hidden observation posts as American landing craft approached the beaches. The Marines hit the volcanic black sand on February 19th, 1945. They immediately discovered the beach wasn't sand at all. It was volcanic ash that one Marine described as like walking on ball bearings. Men sank to their ankles, vehicles bogged down. Digging foxholes was nearly impossible, and then the fire started. Private James Wheeler of the 28th Marines recalled the psychological horror. You could barely crawl out of the landing craft before the machine gun fire started. But Marines reported never seeing the enemy fire came from invisible positions. Men fell without ever identifying the shooter. Mortar rounds dropped from nowhere. Artillery appeared from cave mouths, fired, and vanished. The confident predictions of a 5-day operation collapsed within hours. This wasn't the battle American planners had imagined. The enemy wasn't defending positions Americans could see and destroy. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere, emerging from the earth itself. The illusion of a quick victory died on the beaches. Now Marines faced something worse than a tough fight. They faced an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't find, and couldn't kill with conventional tactics. What does warfare look like when the battlefield itself is your enemy? This wasn't warfare as Americans knew it. This was systematic slaughter, engineered yard by yard, bunker by bunker, body by body. Marines advanced through volcanic sand that made every step exhausting while taking fire from invisible positions connected by underground tunnels. Defenders would attack from one position, retreat through the tunnels, and emerge to attack from a completely different angle. Americans would fight for hours to capture a bunker, only to discover it was empty. The enemy had already relocated through underground passages to attack from behind. Each bunker required close quarters clearing with flamethrowers, satchel charges, and grenades. But these weren't isolated positions, they were interconnected strong points, designed to provide mutual covering fire. Attacking one bunker meant taking fire from 3 others. Clearing one position accomplished nothing because defenders could return through the tunnels once Marines moved forward. The psychological toll was devastating. Corporal Herschel Woody Williams, who received the Medal of Honor for his actions, described flamethrower operations as feeling like I was in hell. Operators reported crawling up to pillboxes under intense fire, then using flamethrowers to clear defenders inside. The terrible screams from inside bunkers haunted them for decades. The killing was intimate, brutal, and endless. Sherman M4A3R3, Zippo flamethrower tanks were brought forward to attack bunkers. Combat engineers improvised new techniques daily. Bazookas and demolition teams worked to neutralize pillboxes, but the terrain itself fought against them. The volcanic landscape created natural kill zones. Rocky ridges around the Motoyama airfields and the northern plateau provided perfect defensive positions that had to be taken one at a time. Kuribayashi's strategy worked exactly as designed. American casualties reached approximately 26,000, 6,821 killed or missing, and 19,217 wounded Japanese casualties, totaled about 21,000 killed. This was one of the only Pacific battles where American losses approached enemy deaths. At Tarawa, the Americans suffered about 3,100 casualties while killing nearly all 4,800 Japanese defenders. At Saipan, 13,790 American casualties versus 29,000 Japanese killed. The ratio at Iwo Jima was unprecedented and shocking. Only 216 Japanese prisoners were taken from a garrison of 21,000. Kuribayashi's orders to fight to the death while inflicting maximum casualties rather than dying in wasteful banzai charges meant nearly every defender fought until killed. The Americans weren't just taking an island, they were clearing a fortress one room at a time, and every room cost lives. On February 23rd, just 4 days into the battle, 6 Marines raised an American flag atop Mount Suribachi. The photograph would become the most iconic image of World War II. But the battle was far from over, and the gap between symbol and reality would define Iwo Jima's legacy forever. The most famous photograph of World War II was taken 4 days into a 36-day battle. 3 of the 6 men in the picture would be dead before it ended. Joe Rosenthal captured the second flag raising atop Mount Suribachi on February 23, 1945. Earlier that morning, Marines had raised a smaller flag, but commanders ordered it replaced with a larger one for visibility. Rosenthal's photograph of 6 Marines raising the second flag became an instant symbol of American victory and determination. It was reproduced millions of times. It inspired the Marine Corps War Memorial. It became the defining image of American resolve in World War II. But the symbolic victory occurred only 4 days into what would become a 36-day battle. Mount Suribachi was the southern tip of the island. Kuribayashi's main defenses remained intact in the northern highlands. The deadliest fighting still lay ahead. Of the 6 Marines in Rosenthal's iconic photograph, Ira Hayes, Franklin Sousley, Harlan Block, Michael Strank, Renee Gagnon, and John Bradley, 3 were killed in action on Iwo Jima. After the photo, Sousley, Bloch, and Strank never left the island. Bradley was wounded. Hayes and Gagnon survived but struggled with fame and post-war trauma. Hayes, a Pima Native American, became a symbol himself, but the weight of being a celebrated hero from a battle that killed so many destroyed him. The flag flew over Mount Suribachi while Marines continued fighting in the northern hellscape for another month. The rugged terrain, rocky ridges, and entrenched defenders turned every yard into a killing ground. The advance slowed to a crawl, the casualty lists grew longer, and back home, Americans saw Rosenthal's photograph and thought the battle was won. The final casualty count of 26,000 American casualties, including nearly 7,000 dead, for an 8-square-mile island, sparked immediate debate. Was the strategic value worth the human cost? The question wasn't abstract. It was written in the names of 6,821 dead Marines. Post-war analysis provided some validation. Over 2,400 B-29s made emergency landings on Iwo Jima. Approximately 24,000 aircrew were potentially saved P-51 Mustang escorts based on the island's increased bomber survivability. The monthly tonnage of bombs dropped on Japan increased dramatically after Iwo Jima's capture. These were real measurable benefits, but historians like Richard B. Frank and Samuel Eliot Morrison have questioned whether these benefits justified the cost. The island's radar warning value had diminished by 1945. The actual impact on the bombing campaign was less decisive than anticipated. Some analysts argue alternative strategies might have achieved similar results with fewer casualties. The debate continues today because the question has no comfortable answer. The flag flew over Mount Suribachi, but the killing continued for another month. When it finally ended on March 26, 1945, Iwo Jima had achieved something unprecedented. It made America question whether any strategic objective was worth this much blood. The Battle of Iwo Jima can be told as the story of a catastrophic intelligence failure that sent 30,000 Marines into an invisible fortress, transforming an expected 5-day operation into 36 days of yard-by-yard slaughter that cost 26,000 American casualties, Kuribayashi's revolutionary underground strategy, 11 miles of tunnels, 800 fortified positions, and orders to kill rather than die gloriously, achieved exactly what he intended. It made the invasion of Japan look too costly to contemplate. The iconic flag raising became America's symbol of victory, but it captured only a moment in a battle that would rage for another month. The image shows 6 Marines raising a flag while 3 of them had yet to die. That gap between symbol and reality defines Iwo Jima's place in history. Were 2,400 B-29s saved and Japan's eventual surrender worth nearly 7,000 American lives for 8 square miles of volcanic rock? The question assumes we can measure lives against strategic objectives, that we can calculate the value of an island in casualties and benefits. Iwo Jima refuses that calculation. Its answer is written in blood, tunnels, and an image that became more powerful than the battle itself. Kuribayashi never left the island. He died somewhere in the northern caves during the final days, his body never found. His revolutionary strategy succeeded completely. Iwo Jima demonstrated that invading Japan would cost hundreds of thousands of American lives. That calculation influenced every decision that followed, from the atomic bombs to Japan's surrender terms. The Marines who survived carried Iwo Jima with them forever. The flamethrower operators who heard the screams, the demolition teams who cleared bunkers one at a time, the men who watched friends die without ever seeing the enemy who killed them, and the 3 flag raisers who didn't survive to see their photograph become immortal. Iwo Jima proved that modern warfare could transform a tiny volcanic island into hell itself. It proved that courage and firepower weren't enough when the enemy controlled the ground beneath your feet. And it proved that America's will to fight had limits. that there were costs too high to pay even for strategic necessity. The flag still flies over the island today. The tunnels remain beneath it, silent monuments to 21,000 Japanese soldiers who died exactly as ordered, and 6,821 Marines who died taking 8 square miles of volcanic rock that might have won the war or might have been the most costly mistake of the Pacific campaign. History has never decided which. Perhaps it never will.